Hello everyone and welcome to Contemporary Math. We are starting a new chapter today on logic and critical thinking. Hope you're having a great day and let's get going with our lesson. So just a little history with the Greeks. We're going to be looking at Aristotelian logic, and the ancient Greeks were the first people to look at the way humans think and draw conclusions. So we're thinking about the way we think. And Aristotle, about 384 to 322 BC, is called the father of logic. And so this logic has been taught and studied for more than 2,000 years. When you get to college, you will probably have to take a course on critical thinking. So this is going to be a great preview for you and an intro to that. A couple other mathematicians who have advanced our study of logic. We have Leibniz here. He believed that all mathematical and scientific concepts could be derived from logic, and he was the first to seriously study symbolic logic, and that's what we're going to be looking at today is symbolic logic. In this type of logic, written statements use symbols and letters. And then George Boole is said to be the founder of symbolic logic because he had such an impressive work in this area, and so we're going to be taking a look at some of that today. So when you have symbolic logic, we have things called connectives and we have things called statements. So a statement is a sentence that can be judged either true or false, like, my name is Mr. Potoff. Okay? And we can assign this a truth value. So my name is Mr. Potoff, that is a true statement. Now that was a simple statement. It conveyed only one idea. It conveyed what my name was. Compound statements are sentences that combine two or more ideas using connectives. So I can say, my name is Mr. Potoff and I teach at Orange Lutheran High School. So when you look at connectives, they're going to be words like and, or, if then, not, if and only if. So they're going to be used to connect two or more ideas together. And there's lots more. We'll talk about some of those a little bit later. In logic, we also deal with certain words called quantifiers, talking about how many. So we have the words all, some, and none. And we're going to explore just how these work in dealing with logic. Now the negation of something is a very important concept in logic, and it means to give a statement its opposite meaning. And the negation will have a different truth value. So the negation of a false statement is always a true statement, and the negation of a true statement is also always a false statement. So when I gave the statement, my name is Mr. Potoff, the negation would be, my name is not Mr. Potoff. So you can see in the first example, it was true, my name is Mr. Potoff. So when I say my name is not Mr. Potoff, the truth value switches, and it becomes false. Now, when you deal with quantifiers, all, some, and none, the negation gets a little bit more tricky. And the reason is, when you say some, you're really meaning at least one. So if you're gonna take the negation of some are, that means at least one is. Okay, the opposite is going to be that none are. So it's a little bit odd. And if you say that all are, okay, our mind tends to think that none are would be the negation, but it's really some are not. So we just need one case to make it not true. And we'll take a look at this in a little bit as well. When we deal with the word or, there's something called an inclusive or and an exclusive or. So inclusive means one or the other, or both can take place at the same time. And we use this one. It's very similar to the union in set theory. The exclusive or means only one or the other, but not both can take place. Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking at. We're going to be using the inclusive or here. Commas, they just hold a special place in our sentences, and they're used to group statements, compound statements together using parentheses. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about our summary of connectives. So we have a couple different names for these connectives. The first one we'll talk about is called a negation. The symbol we're going to be using is the tilde. Okay, some textbooks will use this symbol, so if you see that, if you're searching anything, that also means negation. So the symbolic form of this is negation P. So P becomes a statement, and so the negation goes in front of a statement. You might also see the negation in front of a couple statements combined like this. Now this first one is red, not P. And the second one is red, it is false that. And then whatever's inside. Another connective we have is called a conjunction. Its symbol is just an upside down V. And the way this is used in symbolic form is it's used to connect two simple statements. So we would read this P and Q. Okay, so the conjunction has the word and that goes with it. Our next connective is called a disjunction. And this one just looks like a V. In symbolic form, it goes between two simple statements. And this is read P or Q. Our next one is called conditional. We just write this as an arrow going in a single direction. In symbolic form, it'll join two statements just like this. Now this one's a little bit harder to read because you have to say if P, then Q. So this is an if-then statement, a conditional statement. So it's if P, then Q, written just like this. And the last one we're going to talk about today is called biconditional. And so it's a conditional, but going two ways. So we have an arrow going to the right and also to the left. The way we write this in symbolic form is it joins two statements, and we read this as P if and only if Q. All right. Next, we're going to talk about the dominance of connectives. So when you see these things in sentences, we can kind of see how they work. So the least dominant of all our connectives is the negation. And it turns out that you want to evaluate any negations first. Next is conjunctions and disjunctions. They're kind of equal in terms of dominance, and you would evaluate these next. Next comes the conditional, and the most dominant is the biconditional. Okay, so we name a statement by its most dominant characteristic, but we evaluate statements starting with their least dominant. All right, we're going to deal with quantifiers and negations, and again we have this graphic here that shows us that all are, the negation is, some are not, and vice versa. Some are not, the negation is, all are. None are, the negation is, some are, and some are, the negation is, none are. So we want to write the negation of each statement. It says some dogs have tails. So we just want to see which one of these does this match up with. Well, some have is the same thing as some are. So the negation is going to be none are, And we just have to translate back into the words. So the negation is no dogs have tails. So sometimes in logic, if we try to think about it too much, we might get in trouble. But if we just follow the rules, we're always going to get the correct answer. There are no surprises in logic. So, number 2, it says all books have pictures. So all have, that's like a double positive there. So all are, the negation is some are not. So we're going to write some books don't have pictures. Okay, go ahead and try number 3 and 4 on your own. You can pause the video and then come back to check your answers. All right, welcome back. Go ahead and check your answers there. We should have some sheep have feathers and all cars have CD players. All right, let's look at the truth values now, because we know the negation switches the truth values. So when we write some dogs have tails, that is a true statement. Now let's check our negation. No dogs have tails. Well, that is a false statement. So we can see the negation has switched our true and false. All books have pictures. We might wish that, but that's a false statement. And then the statement some books don't have pictures, that is a true statement. No sheep have feathers. Well, that's true, they have wool. So some sheep have feathers is a false statement. Some cars don't have CD players. That's a true statement. And then all cars have CD players would be a false statement. So it's always a good idea to go back and check true and false and make sure your negation switched. Moving on. Next we're going to be taking statements and then writing them in symbolic form. So a lot of times we'll be given statements like Joyce will go to the movie, and we're going to give it a letter, a symbol, P. And Joyce will eat popcorn, and we'll call that Q. These letters can be anything. Typically we use P, Q, and R, but they really can be anything. So we want to rewrite this statement, Joyce will go to the movie and she won't eat popcorn, using nothing but symbols, P, Qs, and these symbols up here. So Joyce will go to the movie, well, that's P, and is right here, this is our conjunction, she won't eat popcorn. Okay, so Q is she will eat popcorn, so won't is the negation, and then eating popcorn is Q. So we would read this P and not Q. Number 6, Joyce will go to the movie or Joyce will eat popcorn. So Joyce will go to the movie is P, or is our connective. So we write it like that. Joyce will eat popcorn is Q. So P or Q. Go ahead and try number 7 on your own. You can pause the video and then come back to check your answer. Welcome back. You should have gotten negation Q or P. All right, let's move on. In our next example, we're going to talk about how commas are used to indicate parentheses. So we have P, Q, and R here. Dinner includes soup, dinner includes salad, dinner includes bread. So here is our statement we want to write in symbols. Dinner includes soup, comma, and salad or bread. So we're going to write dinner includes soup right here. And this comma means it's going to be separated from the rest of this. So now we have and salad or bread. So we have salad or bread, which would be Q or R. Now, in looking at the commas, it's not going to make sense to put our parentheses around that and, but we are going to put our parentheses right here around this compound statement. Go ahead and try number 9 on your own. You can pause the video and come back to check your work. Welcome back. You should have gotten P and Q in parentheses, then or R. All right, let's move along. Next, we want to be able to take symbolic statements and rewrite them in words and sentences. So statement P is Tanya is the star. Statement Q is Matt is singing. We want to take these symbols and translate them back into some sentences. So here we have negation P or negation Q. Not P or not Q. So not P would be Tanya is not the star. Okay, this little V is or. And then not Q, we're going to say Matt is not singing. All right, it may feel a little strange right now because these sentences really don't mean a whole lot, but we're not worrying about that. We're just dealing with the language and the symbols right now. In number 11, now we can see this negation is on the outside of our parentheses. So anytime you have the negation on the outside, we write it is false that. And then we're going to put a comma. And that comma means it's going to join whatever we put together after that comma until we get to a new comma. So now just P and Q. So we're going to say Tanya is the star and Matt is singing. And there we go. Let's move on. Next, we're going to deal with the connective if-then, which is this arrow here. So we're given our statements. P, I go into the bookstore. Q, I will spend money. So 12, it says, if I go into the bookstore, comma, then I will spend money. So this one's a little bit trickier. This if is going to tell us that this next part, I go into the bookstore, is the antecedent. Let me write that out for you. And it's the first part of an if-then statement. So if I go into the bookstore, that's P. Then we have the second half of our connective, then. And that is the place where we put our arrow. So the if tells us to start, the then tells us to put the arrow, and then we get this next statement, and that is the consequent. It's almost like a consequence. Okay. So if this, then this. If P, then Q. So here, then I will spend money is statement Q. So we get P, if P, then Q. Okay. Never say P arrow Q. That doesn't mean anything. And people will look at you funny. Okay, so don't say that. We want to say if P, then Q. It'll take a little bit to get used to this when you see an arrow, if P, then Q. All right. Go ahead and try 13 and 14 on your own now. It's going to kind of combine a couple different things here, but I want to see how well you're doing. So go ahead and pause the video, give those a try, and then check your answers. All right, welcome back. So you can see how negations can kind of sneak into any of these compound statements here. So you just follow the way it says. If means we have an antecedent. Do not go into the bookstore. So not P. Then I will not spend money. So not. spend money is not Q, and then the then tells us where the arrow is. Again, this it is false that, hopefully you got this okay, where we have negation in parentheses, and then inside it's just the simple if P, then Q. All right, let's move on. So we're going to write some of these in words now, and just for some more practice. Now we have 3 statements, P, Q, and R, all happening here, and they can all be joined with the different connectives we've learned so far. So in looking at this, if we were to evaluate it, we would evaluate the negation first, then the or, then the if-then. And so this is what we would call a conditional statement. Okay, so whatever gets evaluated last is what the statement's called. So in this conditional statement, now we want to start with if. And the antecedent is actually going to be this entire thing in parentheses. So we're going to have Q, Sally's major is nursing. Okay, the V stands for or. And then negation P is going to be Sally is not in calculus. All right, and because we have parentheses here, we're going to put a comma. Where you see the arrow, that's where you're going to write then. And now we have the consequent, R. Sally's major is engineering. Okay, so we get if Sally's major is nursing or Sally is not in calc, then Sally's major is engineering. Go ahead and try number 16 on your own. So write that out, pause the video, and come back to check your work. All right, this one was a tough one. So we start off here just with Q, and so we say Sally's major is nursing. So that's pretty easy. Now because after the or we have parentheses, I'm going to go ahead and put this comma right in here. And then we're going to write the or because of this V. Now you have to notice, jump ahead, anytime you see an arrow, you're going to have to start an if before the not P. So that's where that if comes from. So if, and then not P, Sally is not in calc. And the arrow tells me to write then, and then R, Sally's major is engineering. Now what type of statement would this be? Well, looking at what would get evaluated last, we would do negation P first, then the arrow, then we would join it together with an or. The cow is brown. So this would be considered a disjunction. If and all right, let's move only on. If. Our final connective, milk if and only if the double arrow. So we want to write chocolate. The following symbolic statements in words. P, the cow is brown. Q, the milk is chocolate. Okay. So nothing too tricky right there. You see the double arrow, you put if and only if in between. Go ahead and try number 18 on your own. Pause the video, then come back to check your work. All right, welcome back. So again, this is another negation parentheses. So we say it is false that, and that sets it off. And then we have our comma. We say the cow is brown if and only if the milk is not chocolate, and a period. So what type of statements are these? Well, this one is your biconditional. And this one, what would be evaluated last? So we'd have our negation Q first. Then we like to do negations first, but we have to do what's in parentheses first. So because this negation is on the outside of the parentheses, this statement would actually be a negation. All right, let's move on. So here we want to practice using the dominance of connectives to add parentheses to these statements and then indicate what type it is. So here we see P or Q arrow R. Oh, we never say arrow. So this would be P or if Q, then R. So if this was just listed here, we wouldn't really know what to do, except that we know that the order of our connectives go like this. Okay, so negations first, then conjunction, disjunction, then conditional, then biconditional. So looking at this, we would have to do the disjunction first and then the conditional. So because we're doing the conditional last, we would call this a conditional statement. In number 20, here we would do the negation first, then the conjunction here, then this disjunction, and finally we would do the biconditional. So this is a biconditional statement. All right, so that's the end of our lesson. Again, the focus is just on being able to translate these things back and forth, understand the terminology, and say them correctly so that we can talk about them in the next couple coming lessons. All right, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in class.